Some nights the world feels too quiet, too still. But in one small garden, a little lantern waited for someone who remembered how to see magic in simple things. Long ago, in a small town that smelled of flowers and wet earth, a little girl named Lila had a garden she loved. It wasn't big, just a narrow patch of soil behind her house. But in that garden, Lila could do anything. She could talk to the wind, she could tell secrets to the tulips, she could imagine faraway lands under the branches of old apple tree. In the center of the garden stood a tiny lantern. It was not very tall, not very bright, but it glowed in the way a friend glows, steady, warm, and patient. Her grandmother had given it to her one evening, saying, "Some lights are small, but they last a long time. They only need someone to notice them." Lila had taken those words seriously. She polished the lantern each night, filled it with oil, and lit it when the sky turned a deep, soft blue. The lantern became her companion. It listened when she whispered about her day. It stayed with her when she counted the stars. It watched patiently as she traced invisible stories along the soil with her fingers. Even on the coldest nights, when her mother told her to go to bed, Lila would look back at the lantern and smile. It was a small thing, but it carried everything that felt safe in the world. As Lila grew older, she spent less time in the garden. The schoolwork became longer, the streets busier, the days shorter, but every time she passed the little garden gate, she could see the lantern glowing quietly, waiting for her. It never grew dim, it never complained. Even when the flowers wilted, even when the soil cracked in summer heat, the lantern shone as if it knew she would return. One night, a storm came. The wind shook the branches, rain ran in streets down the roof. Lila, now older and tired from the day, looked out the window. The little lantern swayed in the wind but never went out. She remembered the first time she held it in her hands, her grandmother's soft voice in the background, the smell of earth and flowers and warm tea. Something inside her stirred, a gentle tug that reminded her of the magic in the quiet things we often forget. The next morning, Lila ran outside. She held the lantern in her hands, careful not to let it fall. She cleaned it, wiped the water away, and placed it back in its spot in the garden. And she whispered, "I see you. I remember." The garden seemed to hum softly, not a sound anyone else could hear, but the kind of hum that tells you the world is exactly as it should be. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Lila left for school, made friends, explored new places, but each night when she returned home, she would sneak into the garden. She didn't need to light. the lantern anymore. She didn't need it to see. It glowed not for her eyes, but for her heart. Years later, Lila returned to the garden as an adult. The garden had grown wilder, the flowers taller, the grass uneven, but the lantern still stood there, exactly where it always had. And just like a long ago, it waited. She knelt down, touched its warm metal, and remembered the smell of wet soil, the sound of rain on the roof, the stories she whispered to the tulips, her grandmother's voice, the little magic she thought she had lost. It was all still there. All of it had waited for her. And in that moment, Lila understood something important. Some things in the world don't need attention to exist. Some lights wait patiently, quietly for someone to notice. And when we do notice, everything changes. The little lantern didn't just glow in the garden, it glowed in her memory, it glowed in her heart. And sometimes, when the world feels too quiet, she could still see it shining softly, saying, I waited, and I will always wait. Magic only asks for attention, not permission. And with that thought, Lila went inside, closed the door, and the garden stayed growing behind her. Silent, patient, eternal.